Hey everybody, welcome into this week's Ask Mike. Good to be with you, Alyssa Orange, alongside the one and only Mike Irwin on this holiday week. Got a lot of questions because even though you got all your shopping done, by the way?
No.
We got shopping still to do this week. We've also got a lot to talk about and a bowl game at the end of the week to get to. So let's jump in. Here we go. Our first question is from S. Giles, who we love. What is going on with Braylon Russell? How many times are they going to let him go into the portal and come back out of the portal? Did Sam screw up by letting him come back again and again?
This has been hashed all over the place. Hogville, message boards, X, Facebook. But here's the thing. First of all, people are making a lot of assumptions that don't know anything about this thing. But if you talk to most people that know a little bit about him, he has a history. Going back to high school, of moving here, moving there, forces, I won't say who, but there's forces within the family that's always leading him somewhere else. By all accounts, he's always wanted to be at Arkansas, likes being at Arkansas, but has been pulled in different directions. I was told that he did get an offer from Ole Miss, but he just decided he'd rather be here and went back to Sam Pittman, said, I want to come back. They sat down and had a talk, and Pittman's convinced that he's back for good. He issued this statement. This was Braylon. The love I have for Coach Pitt and the University of Arkansas is beyond words. With everything happening in my life, I initially lost sight of what truly matters, but through conversations with Coach Pitt, I've regained perspective. Thank you so much. I love you. Yeah. So they worked it out. Now, here's my position on this. You can say what you want. You shouldn't have let him come back. Goodbye, go away, and all that. You don't make that decision. There's one guy that makes that decision. He's the head coach. He's also got to figure out what's best for the bowl game, what's best for next year. Here's the thing about Braylon. You can talk all you want about this off-the-field stuff that's been going on, but what you can't question is what he's done on the field. If this had been a thing where all this other stuff had gotten and affected him on the field, and a lot of times it does, when you got a family situation and stuff's going on, I've seen player after player, I've seen it affect them on the field, and then yes, that's an issue. There's never been one time when he was on the football field that he didn't give 100%. He doesn't have a history of getting penalties. He doesn't have a history of screwing up. He's got the highest yards per carry average of all of the backs. He's got the longest run from scrimmage of all of the backs, 75 yards or whatever. They would not have won against Tennessee without him, and I think they might have lost to Ole Miss or Mississippi State without him because he had a huge day. So he was important. And I think Sam Pittman looked at this and said, he's important to us moving forward. And I think he looked at this and said, I think this stuff is over now. We're going to bring him back. He's going to be a big part of what we do next year. They would have had issues at running back without him.
I think that at the end of the day, fans and us in the media have to accept and be okay with the fact that whatever conversation was had behind that closed door with Sam Pittman and Braylon Russell is good enough.
Yeah.
And this is where we are right now.
And now we'll sit back and watch him in the bowl game and see what happens.
But you make a really good point in your wording here, and I agree with this. I don't think Braylon Russell needs to start against Texas Tech. I think Rodney Hill and Tyrell Reed deserve to be on that field first. Now, how much you play Braylon after that is what it is, but Rodney Hill and Tyrell Reed deserve to be on that football field before Braylon Russell does, and then let the rest of the chips fall.
I would agree with that 100%.
Here we go. Next question. The Hawk Hawkins says, I'm getting tired of these keyboard experts ripping every new player coming to Arkansas via the portal. They don't have a clue about the new class. I don't either, but at least I'm willing to admit it.
And truthfully, that's a good statement because most of us don't. I mean, here's what most people do when they're commenting on somebody that's coming in from the portal. They're either commenting on where they're coming in from, and if it's a FCS school or a mid-major, they're going to be, a lot of these people are going to be skeptical. Well, he's replacing this guy was from here, he played in the SEC, this guy never has. That stuff's been going on ever since there's a portal. I mean, if coming in from a lower, an FCS school or a mid-major was an issue, then they'd never gone after Andrew Armstrong or Isaac Tesla, and they both turned out to be really good players
Drew
here.
Sanders.
Drew Sanders.
Landon Jackson.
There's all kinds.
All the kinds of, again, it takes and it gives. And, like, I feel like we're a broken record when we say that, but it does.
Well, again, they got a wide receiver out of Fresno that's got ties to Bobby Petrino. I mean, he knows Petrino's offense. I can see why they went after him because they need a lot of wide receivers.
Green.
They brought in a running back out of New Mexico State. He has really good numbers. You can't just sit here and say he won't do anything in the SEC. You don't know. Now, the other complaint is, and some of these guys that they've gotten from Power 4 teams, especially SEC teams, for instance, a lot of them don't have a lot of stats. They got an offensive lineman just today from Ole Miss that redshirted. He was a true freshman. He was highly recruited. He went there, redshirted, and so he's never played there, and he's coming here. Well, you don't know how good he is. Ole Miss had a good season.
But that's like recruiting him out of high school.
Exactly. It's what they're doing again. He's just got 1 year behind him where he's worked with another team. So you have guys like that, but you also have an offensive lineman from Georgia Tech that's really good, that really performed there. You have a center from Central Florida, and they need guys like that. So it's not in every case, but simply because a guy's from a Power 4 school, like there's an offensive lineman, true freshman, redshirted, didn't play at all, from Oregon, a huge kid, 6'8", 350. And you're going to sit here and say, oh, well, he didn't do anything. Well, he didn't. That doesn't mean he won't do anything here.
Right.
So the bottom line on a portal class is you're not going to know until until this team plays games next fall. I mean, we will cover
everybody you bring in.
Exactly. We will go out there in the spring and we'll do stories on these guys and they'll play them up because that's what the coaches want. And then maybe we'll do something in fall camp. If we get to go to fall camp, we might not. But we'll do what we can to show you what they're doing, how they look, blah, blah, blah. But until they play against an actual team and the season starts, you're not going to know.
Yeah.
So you can sit around and waste your time talking all day long about these guys. You just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Armand Abbey wants to know, who is Arkansas's biggest portal get so far?
Well, I would say Braylon Russell because they did get him out of the portal. I think they needed that. They needed a big, physical, offensive lineman that produces when he's in a game. And he's played in the SEC. He's been in big games. There's not any bigger game than the Tennessee game here, where you have your starting quarterback hurt, you've got a backup quarterback in there, and you've got to have something in the running game to take pressure off that backup quarterback. He's been in pressure situations. Yeah. And you can't say the kind of stuff they're saying about a lot of these other guys. You can't say that about him because he was here. He did play against SEC competition, and he was very good. And there's no history of him not performing when he's in a game. So I think he's the biggest portal get.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I remember, this was way before the portal and way before, NIL. But remember Brett Bielema said, my biggest recruit this offseason was Trey Flowers. And getting Trey Flowers to come back. And sometimes, that's what Sam said, sometimes we got to focus on recruiting the guys we already have in our locker room to stay or to come back to us, just as important as going and getting all these guys that you've already mentioned.
Yeah, Taylor Green coming back for about a week. We weren't sure.
Yeah.
And then, he's back. And I think that's a big part of their offense, but not only in the bowl game, but moving forward for next year.
Absolutely. All right, more portal talk, because of course there is. Is it closed now, though, Mike? Hog Redneck wants to know, somebody told me that Sunday was the last day for visits. Is this it for Arkansas? 13 new players when they lost over 20.
Well, it's now up to 14 because, again, they got the offensive lineman just a couple hours ago from Ole Miss. So it's up to 14. Here's the thing. Coaches, even though it's a dead period, coaches can still call these guys on the phone and talk to them and arrange things, find out, they can talk money, they can do a lot of things over the phone. The visits, you don't always have to have visits, but if a kid does need a visit, there's a period, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, where visits start back up. And then there's this additional thing where if you played in a bowl game for your team but are in the portal, you're allowed, I think, up to 2 weeks to schedule. I think you're given maybe 4 days but you've got up to 2 weeks after that to decide when you're going to do it. So there'll be more visits. Okay. Now, Otis Kirk's been following this for us. He does a great job. And he tells me that there could be portal visits well into the middle of January. He thinks when it's all said and done, they'll be close to the number of players that left, which is 23. Might just be 20 or whatever, but they're not going to end up with 14 guys and 23 left. That won't happen.
Well, that's good to know. All right. Fa'at says, there seems to be some under-the-table deals by teams in the SEC before the portal was open. What can be done to stop teams from making deals with players prior to the opening of the portal?
The biggest issue, the biggest issue with that is the agents. Yeah. Let's revisit this whole NIL thing, because when NIL was originally came into being as a result of the Supreme Court ruling, and that's been, I don't know, what,
a couple years ago. I remember sitting here doing an Ask Mike episode talking about this.
Yeah, it was a while back. And the original rule was to allow an athlete to get on campus. Once he's on campus, then that school will recommend an NIL agent, and then that NIL agent would get him NIL deals at the school where he was. There was nothing in that about, hey, shop me out to other teams. I think if there was an NCAA rule that said you couldn't do that. And it got shot down largely because of Tennessee and a couple other schools filed a lawsuit. And I think that injunction they got is still in place. And that's why we have no rules right now. But the agents have gone absolutely bonkers. And it's free enterprise for them. They make more money. They get a percentage of whatever deal they work. So they're like anybody else. They're like if they're a salesman, they want to sell, 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 sell. So if a guy is getting X amount of money at one school, they got no problem picking up the phone and calling another school and going, hey, he's getting this here, what will you give him? And that's been going on everywhere. And it's reached a ridiculous stage in which, for instance, Washington State, they lost their quarterback, they lost virtually everybody.
Their
coach, everybody. It just went bonkers because of it. You think it's bad here? It was horrible there. And it's starting to even affect some of these teams that are in the college football playoffs. So because so many schools are affected by this, I promise you, we don't know the specifics of this revenue sharing plan that goes into effect supposedly in April. But I promise you it's going to have some provision to prevent this, because this is not sustainable. It's open free agency. They don't even allow that in the NFL, so there will be something done. I don't know whether it's a contract that you have to sign, because with revenue sharing, you're getting money through the school. It's no longer an NIL, which is a separate thing. It's money the school's going to give you out of their own athletic budget. You go in, you sign a contract, we're going to give you this much for this year, maybe this much next year, and you got to go 2 years maybe, and then if you want to transfer, you can. But here's the reason why you might not want to do that. Because schools are there's no longer going to be these schools like Ole Miss that have these huge NIL budgets that can outbid you for everything. Everybody's going to have the same budget. So how are they going to outbid you when they don't have more money than you do? There are, I think, going to be, the rules are going to change. And I think rules are going to be enforced this time around by the NCAA. They haven't been able to enforce any of their rules because of these courts. And supposedly Congress is going to get involved, pass some legislation. I've been told that maybe it's Tom Tuberville. He would know more about this than anybody else on Capitol Hill. But maybe they've even talked to people on the Supreme Court who have acknowledged, look, this is not what we intended. We were simply trying to say, you can't go sell a product and use a player's name, image, and likeness and just blow him off. Yeah. He gets that money. And so an NIL will go back to that. So I think all of this will help, and I think this may be the last portal where these agents are going around going bonkers.
Yeah, so Marty Bird's proxy kind of wheels right into this. More and more coaches insinuating that there has been large-scale tampering by various, one in particular, I think we all know who we're talking about here, programs. When everything evens out in a few years, will that program and coach have a target on their
Okay,
back?
let's cut to the chase here. Are there enough mad coaches around the SEC or in other places where they would be mad at Lane Kiffin, mad at what they're doing, and so they would want to just go after him? I think a much bigger issue for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin is what do they do when they no longer have this advantage?
Yeah.
I mean, we heard the rumors that he spent $20 million on this portal class last year. I don't know if that was true or not. That was the rumor. What we do know is they ballyhooed that portal class for months. They got on Twitter. They got on social media.
Come to the SIP.
Yeah, they changed who they were. We're the SIP now. Somebody came up with that. We're the SIP. I guess we're the Ville here. I don't know.
The Ville. Let's do it, Mike. Let's copyright that. The Ville. Come to the Ville.
But they like to come up with names at Ole Miss. I think they're infatuated with new names. But anyway, they talked nonstop. We're going to get into the SEC championship game. We're going to make the playoffs. They spent all that money, and they're in the what? Gator Bowl?
Yeah.
Gator Bowl. So if you want to spend $20 million to get to the Gator Bowl, I hope you enjoyed it. But I don't think they're going to have that advantage moving forward. So then what happens? And maybe they get payback. I don't know. I mean, I'm not in charge of payback. I've always sort of believed in karma, but not 100%.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll all play itself out, and we'll find out, 10 years down the road what actually is going to happen. Yep. All right, Lanny wants to know, is the 12-team playoff a mistake? If not, it's not off to a good start, which is a very interesting take. The round one games were all blowouts. Did the committee get the teams wrong? I'm very curious about your take in this, Mike.
Well, that seems to be what a lot of people are saying. More specifically, fans of SEC teams like Ole Miss, South Carolina, Alabama, and I'm sure even, probably A&M fans think we should have gotten in. The idea that we're so much better than these other teams, we wouldn't have gotten blown out. I don't look at it that way. I don't. I think we've got something brand new in the playoffs this year that's never happened before. It's never happened in college football ever. When you've got something, the long history going back to 1869, that's how long they've been playing college football, and you've got something that's never happened before, nobody can predict it. And what I'm talking about is playing a playoff game on your field.
I think you're 100% right, and hopefully this can be more of a conversation because I think every home team won.
Every one of
them. And it was insane. If you watch those games, the atmosphere, the environment, it was unreal. I mean, it was hard not to get goosebumps when you're watching it on TV. And I've said this, and jokingly, obviously, people want to say you're still bitter about Florida State, and sure, absolutely. But like the number 5 is the new 13. That 13 team was always going to be upset, and they were always going to say why they should have been in, just like the number 5 team did up until this year. I think maybe instead of, in my opinion, and looking at it and reading what people have to say, a good point that some are making is it's not necessarily the teams that got in, because winning matters. And we've talked about it. I think winning matters. You win, you're 11-1, you deserve to go play for a national championship. It's the seeding. And I'm curious to say, all of the Power 5 teams that won their conference championships got a or the top 4 got a bye. But if they had seeded it for real, just 1 through 12, these matchups would have been a whole lot different and maybe a little more evenly matched. But again, hindsight's 20/20 because we're sitting here on Monday talking about what happened on Friday and Saturday.
The general agreement is, if you read this stuff, or the consensus or whatever, is the team that least belonged was Indiana. Because if you look,
but you go 11-1.
I know, but when you looked at their schedule, they didn't beat anybody really good. This is the team that's being attacked, Indiana. They actually played the closest game, I think. They didn't get blown out.
They didn't get blown out, but the end, Notre Dame just kind of messed around at the end of that game, and it got a little dicey. I just have a hard time with the they didn't play anyone argument, strictly because you can't control your league and who you play in your league, right? And so that's a question for the Big Ten. Do you make your teams more competitive with a much more even competitive schedule? Or if you're SMU in the ACC and you didn't expect Florida State to be absolute trash this year, right? They were a top 10 team to start the season. You didn't expect the teams in the ACC to be as weak as they were this year, but you still won the game, right? You still won the game. And so that should mean something. Or you're telling teams that we're sorry, but your conference doesn't matter.
I think.
And other conferences are weighted. And I am not trying to say that the SEC is not the strongest league in college football, but you do have to understand when you look around, you still have to win the football games that are put in front of you that you schedule to play every single year.
I think if you take an Alabama or Ole Miss or South Carolina and sent them to South Bend, all three of them would have gotten beat because of the atmosphere. Here's what I'm saying. I think this is going to start to happen every year as long as they do it this way. As long as you're seeding and allowing the top-seeded, higher-seeded team to play at home in that first round, you're going to get blowouts because those people are going to be jacked. There's not going to be many people there from the other team, and it's a great atmosphere. It's fun to watch on TV, but what happens to the average viewer?
Does Vandy win in Tuscaloosa?
No.
No, they don't.
The best example I can think
They
of,
don't.
think about how the NCAA basketball tournament works. Do you think Oakland would have beaten Kentucky in Rupp?
No.
No way.
There's no way.
And that's what I'm saying. As long as they do it this way, and I'm not saying there won't ever be an upset, but I'm saying if they keep doing this way every year, here's what's going to happen. Fans are going to tune that first week out because they're going to go, come on, it's going to be a bunch of blowouts. So they'll have to do something.
No, but it's so fun. You can't stop.
It's
That was
fun
awesome, though. But
Well,
the atmosphere.
Okay, are you going to tune in just for the atmosphere, and then after it starts being a blowout, you go, okay, I'm going to watch something else for a while.
Okay, maybe.
Okay, look, I don't know what I think one of two things is going to happen.
Okay.
Either A, you're going to get these ding-dongs, and I talked to one over the weekend. I know him really well. He's in the media, and he wants to go back to 4 teams. And I'm like, shut up. I hate that. Oh, there's only 4 teams that are worth it every year. Shut up. I hate that. But the other answer is, and I don't see this happening, but the other answer would be to add and go to 16 and not have a bye, and have every one of those first-round games played at a neutral site, and you could make it work. All you'd have to do is go find these pro stadiums. That's where they don't need to be played in Memphis. You don't want a ding-dong crowd at one of these games. You get a big city that will have a local committee, and they'll go out and sell all these corporate tickets. They got these corporate people that buy these tickets for people that work for them, like Walmart would buy. If we had a big stadium here in a big city, Walmart would buy it, and then they'd distribute it to the people that work for Walmart. But the point is, you would get a lot of people going to these things that are kind of neutral, but what would happen is they would get there and they'd start rooting for the underdog. And all of a sudden, some team like Alabama that may be, normally they'd get to play at Tuscaloosa. If they keep doing it this way, you go to a neutral site, let's say Vegas. When you go out to Vegas and you're playing some team you should beat.
Boise State,
and everybody goes bonkers over them, and you get beat. This is how the NCAA basketball tournament works. Now, the guy I was arguing with said, hey, wouldn't like that because I want the best team to win the national championship. And I said, does the best team win the national championship in basketball every year?
No.
No, but people still love
baseball,
it. People still
soccer, like every other sport but college football.
I don't know what's going to happen with this. I'm just predicting right now. We'll have to revisit this, I guess. But I think every year that they allow this first round games to be played at some team's home, you're going to get not just wins but blowouts because their fans are going to be totally jacked. Go back to the last time Texas played here in 2021.
Yeah.
No, not this last time, but the 2021 Texas game. How jacked everybody was. Think about that Alabama game when, in what was it, 2010? It was the loudest I've ever heard Reynolds Razorback Stadium. When they almost beat Alabama, when they were ahead of them for a while. I mean, those things are printed in your brain, but I think if you had a playoff game here, the atmosphere would be nutso. It would just go to another level. and it's just hard to overcome that if you're the visiting team.
Yeah, it's
So I don't think
a
it was
never-ending conversation.
I don't think it was
no.
just that there were mismatches. I think there might have been a talent mismatch, which was made much worse by letting the team with the best talent also play at home.
All right, here we go. Where's my spot? There we are. Eddie Lynn. What's up, Eddie Lynn? Vegas continues to favor Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl. They must not know much about freshman Will Hammond. A lot of Tech fans think he's their best QB. You can tell your best friend, Eddie Lynn, that this is Razorback country. I'm just kidding.
Well, he's
just
he's a Razorback fan. What he's basically saying is,
but he lives.
He's kind of warning Razorback fans, don't get all excited. Look, I'm talking to, again, a guy in the media I know. I'm talking about this backup quarterback. And he goes, well, he took 3 or 4 snaps. No, he didn't. He did more than that. But I disagree with Eddie Lynn. We've had a conversation about this. I disagree because I went back and looked at what happened. Now, here's this kid, what's his name? Will Hammonds. Okay. What happened was they were playing TCU. Now, he's your backup quarterback. He's not playing much. Your starter gets hurt sometime toward the end of the first half, but still plays till halftime. Coaches in the locker room make a decision. They're going to have to come out with Will Hammonds in the second half. They're up 17-14. He comes out, leads them on 2 back-to-back touchdown drives. Threw a touchdown pass on one of them, ran for a touchdown on the other. So all of a sudden, they're up 31-14. They're in control. But then it kind of started going the other direction at that point. And in the fourth quarter, TCU caught up with them, passed them with about 4 minutes to go, and it was 35-34. And Hammond starts leading them on a drive, gets them all the way down to about the 25-yard line. They're in field goal range, and he tries to run with the ball and fumbles. Now, how's that going to affect him for the bowl game? Maybe it'll fire him up. I've got to overcome that. But it could also be weighing on his head. In other words, no, he's not some guy that took 3 or 4 snaps, but he is a guy that got put into a very difficult situation and almost won, but he didn't, and he knows they didn't win because of him, because if he doesn't fumble, they can kick a field goal there and win the game.
Yeah.
So there's the story with the backup quarterback.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Tech brings to the table in this Liberty Bowl against this Arkansas team.
Now, other advantage they have is that he's allowed them to play in the bowl game even if they're in the portal. I think they've got a running back in the portal that they weren't sure if he was going to play, and he is.
Yeah.
So Arkansas is still going to be missing all these starters in this bowl game. How is it, 9?
The depth chart looks very different
Yes.
from the Missouri
They
game.
should, in my opinion, they should be favored for that, not because of the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
They should be favored because of all the guys that are going to be missing in Arkansas's lineup.
Yeah. All right, here we go, finally, to basketball. Take a break from football. TL Slayton wants to know, I guess Nellie Davis is now hurt. Seems like our basketball team is jinxed. One guy comes back and another goes out.
This Nellie Davis thing, I don't think it ever got resolved. I think he had pain. He's continued to have pain, but he's also gotten better. And I think Cal looked at their schedule, said, wait a minute, we can win this North Carolina A&T game at home. Then we can let everybody go off for a few days, 3 days or whatever for Christmas break, come back here. I don't know if he plans to play him against Oakland.
No, he doesn't.
Okay.
I don't think he should.
Okay.
There's no reason to.
So then if he does all that, he's off for almost 2 weeks, and that gives you time to rehab that wrist.
And it's a soft cast, and it's just to kind of help it continue to heal and not put him in a basketball game that he doesn't need.
You're looking at something very similar with Jonas Adu. He's had this ankle injury, and he scored 17 points. It's interesting to go back and look at Adu. From when he came back, he was out. He missed 3 games. Then he comes back, and he scores like 2 points. And then he scores 4 points. And then he scores 8 points. And then he scores 11 points. And then he scores 17 points. He's getting slowly better every game. And I thought in this North Carolina A&T, he was huge in that game. They were just lobbing it in. He was dunking it. He was playing good defense. I think he's ready to go. But he said after the game he's still not 100% because he's still got that pain. So maybe he never gets 100%. I don't know. Maybe you would have to just stop playing basketball forever.
Yeah, I don't know.
But he looks good to me.
Yeah.
But
And there's no way that he won't be playing on January 4th against Tennessee. We know that.
Yeah.
So there we go with that. All right, here we go. KY Hogg wants to know, it was a good weekend for me. Big Blue Nation has shut up after Ohio State beat Kentucky by 20.
Okay, this is a guy my age that lives in Kentucky, and he's been surrounded by these people, and especially ever since Cal took the job, I guess they've been driving him nuts, and so he's now happy about this. The poll is out, and they did drop. They were number 4, and they've dropped to 10th. So, but they didn't drop all the way out. Arkansas was not in, and now they moved up to 23rd.
Yeah.
So there's some movement there. I think Kentucky's got a couple of pretty good players that are out right now. So when they come back, I think they immediately get better.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because, you know, they were blowing and going there for a while, and they didn't play very well in the game before this. Then they got beat in this game. So maybe it'll take them down a notch. Not the players, but their fans.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, right. Okay. And then WV Honk fan, our final question of the day. Do you think SEC basketball will be similar to football, that there will be so competitive that some great teams might not have enough conference wins to be invited to the big dance?
It's hard to know what you mean when you say great teams, but there are some really good teams here in the SEC. I looked this up. Right now there are 3 undefeated teams, 5 with 1 loss, and 7 with 2 losses. That means 15 of the 16 SEC teams are 10-2 or better.
Yeah.
That's incredible. In South Carolina, they're bad at 9-3.
Bad.
The SEC right now is 1.
Yeah. They just beat Clemson though.
Yeah,
a ranked
that's
Clemson
right.
team. So
That's
I'm
right.
just saying.
The SEC continues to play well against other Power 4 conferences. The SEC is now 169-22
this year. Wow.
And that's 88% winning percentage. That's incredible. In this poll that's just out, 5 SEC teams are in the top 10 and 9 are ranked. Arkansas is one of the 9. They're at 23rd. Joe Lunardi said 13 SEC teams will make the tournament. If he's right, because I think all 16 teams are good enough, and if they were in another conference, they'd be good enough to be in. So if he's right, that means 3 SEC teams that are good enough to be in the NCAA tournament are going to get left out.
That's crazy.
It's because there's never been Lunardi said
Top to
there's
bottom.
never been a conference this strong, top to bottom, ever.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It's crazy. You talk about the 3 undefeated teams. To tell everybody what those are, if you don't know, it's Florida and Tennessee and
Oklahoma, I think.
Oklahoma. Yeah.
And I've watched these
And
games.
Cal said the other day, Oklahoma was picked by the media to finish 13th in the league.
Yeah.
And
he said,
pretty crazy.
He said, people have been saying, hey, wow, you get to play Vanderbilt twice. He said, you don't want to play Vanderbilt twice. They've lost 1 game.
Yeah.
They're 11-1.
Yeah. So it's really interesting how this is going to play out. And we even talked about this before we sat down to do the show. Like, because this league is so tight right now, and if it stays this way throughout SEC play, you could easily have a team that's a middle-of-the-pack SEC team that's still very good win the SEC championship tournament in Nashville and get that automatic bid. And then what happens to the rest of those other teams? Somebody else gets knocked out. Yeah, it's going to be really, really, really fun. We just got to get there. Arkansas's got 1 more game against Oakland and then Tennessee on January 4th.
In that press conference the other day after North Carolina A&T, he said something that I thought was significant. He said he's been spending the last 2 weeks working on what? His guards, getting the ball inside to the bigs and using 2 bigs at one time. Yeah. And he said one of the things that's helped is Brazil is finally coming on. Brazil is starting to, what Cal did was he challenged him to become a forward, not a tall guard, because he'd been hanging around the 3-point line shooting, and then every once in a while he'd run in and do a dunk. He's saying, now I want you in there playing defense. Well, I saw him play defense in the paint. I saw him back a guy down and make a shot. Now, that's not an SEC team, so we'll see if he can do that. But if you get 2 of those guys, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about Brazil and Big Z or Big Z and Jonas Adu or whatever, you put 2 of them at one time and you got, maybe a couple of guards and a forward, then all of a sudden I think you can be physical enough to match up with some of these teams that I've been watching because they're all physical. That's the whole thing. I think he's been looking at these other teams and going, wow, how do we attack that team? You got to do something because they'll throw up a zone defense on you, and then what are you going to do? And now, the other thing is Arkansas is starting to shoot better.
Well, that's what he said. He also mentioned in that game and that win against North Carolina A&T where they put up 95 points, he goes, we made 3 threes, which proves to me we can score in other ways.
But
that's what I want to see.
But if we do hit threes, and they're last time I checked, they were second and third in the league in three-point shooting. So if they can do that too, makes you more versatile.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, love this group of questions before we hit the holiday break. We'll be right back here next Monday to answer the next batch of questions. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you next week.